Hello everyone, it is I, Vinny, in the meat once again, and today I want to show you my record collection. I thought it would be a good excuse to talk about some music and just show you some stuff that you may enjoy. I don't know. I mean, you might enjoy this. Enter the Gungeon slip mat. But first, it is close to Halloween, so I have my spooky eyeball light. I have Nortz, my co-host, my co-pilot, if you will. And I just want to address something very quickly. People keep saying, Vinny, you look like Leon Kennedy. Vinny, when are you going to save the president's daughter? I just want to let you know that I reject your hypothesis completely. I don't think for a second that I look like Leon Kennedy. And truthfully, I find it rather insulting that people would imply that I do. So, if you wouldn't mind just cutting back on the Leon Kennedy comments, that would be fantastic. Seriously. I mean, come on. He doesn't even have a beard. Well, a little one in Resident Evil 6. So I've been collecting records for probably 15 years now, very lightly in the beginning, a little more in the past couple years, and it's slowed down again. I have a record player, and it's great, but it is a bit of an inconvenience. So for me, I like the artwork, I like the collection aspect of it, but, you know, it's just nice to have them, but they get expensive, so I've slowed down a lot lately. But I'm going to show you some albums and talk about them. So let's start with one of my favorites, Neil Young, On the Beach. This is after the Harvest album Neil Young put out, On the Beach. I've talked about it a lot on my streams, and it is just a great album, really weird, stonery folk. I'm not sure. Definitely some psychedelic, but really heartfelt for Neil, especially after his success. I have Elliott Smith, Either Or, which is another really great album. It's got Ballad of Big Nothing, which I like, Between the Bars. Honestly, I don't think Elliott Smith ever put out a bad album, but this is the one I have. Don't really feel like collecting his entire discography, but it is nice to have at least one. Also, I know it's a bit dark in here, but that's just kind of how I prefer it. You know, Nort's big eyes, very sensitive eyes. Another all-time favorite. This is actually a copy that someone from the Vinesauce community sent me. It is Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin. I think this is their best album, right up there with Zeppelin 4. And this location I've been to. My favorite song is on here, 10 Years Gone. And it's got so many other great songs, Kashmir, Trampled Underfoot, and some of the less known, like the Wonton song. That song is great. So yeah, that always good to have Physical Graffiti. And I have an old record. So this is nice. It's a new one. This is probably my newest album, The Smile. That was my smile. A Light for Attracting Attention is Tom York and Thom York and Johnny Greenwood. I think this is a great album. It almost feels like a new Radiohead album. So I said, fuck it. And I bought it. XTC, Oranges and Lemons. This is an 80s band. I've played Making Plans for Nigel. But this album is a little bit more psychedelic. I like it a lot. I like the Skeleton song. There's a Skeleton song. High recommendation for Halloween. Of course, Pink Floyd Animals. Now, this isn't the version that just came out, which I did not wait for. I got this a couple years back, and, you know, it's Pink Floyd Animals. I think this is the second copy of this that I have, but the new remix, just to say, is amazing. And I usually go back and forth about which Floyd is my favorite. Lately, it's Wish You Were Here, but for years it was Animals, and I'm going to go ahead and say that this is the best musicianship that they've had. And I just like the interplay between Rick and Dave, and even Roger when he plays bass. I think Dave plays bass on a lot of this. But yeah, just a couple songs. They're long, they're great. Dogs is an all-time classic, and the remix is even better because you can hear all the mud and crust is now gone. The best of REM. I kind of love REM, as many of you know, and I like the cover. It's got a cool moon on it, as you can see here. It's a moon. And Nortz, it reminds him of his planet. It feels like you can do a best of REM and still not have all of the best because there's just so much. But you have Man on the Moon, you have What's the Frequency, Kenneth, a lot of later REM stuff, but then you have Losing My Religion, Orange Crush, Stand, In the Place Where You Work. You have Everybody Hurts, which it's a meme song at this point. But great best of, good starting point too. Peter Gabriel, the Melt album, which I've talked about and played a lot. This is an album that I think it influenced Tears for Fears. You'll notice I'm missing a lot of great stuff in my collection. I should have a Tears for Fears record. I don't, sadly. But you have Intruder, No Self-Control, Start, I Don't Remember, which I don't remember is probably my favorite. Games Without Frontiers is probably the famous one. But I love the whole album. I think it really is just this next level, like, step for him that I think the So album is really good, the one with Sledgehammer on it. This is maybe his best. But then you get into the Genesis stuff, and that's a whole different story. But I love the Melt album. Of course, David Bowie, Low. I should have Ziggy Stardust as well, but I've got Low, and I'm happy about that. This was the album that really, really got me into Bowie. He's not even singing on half of this album, so getting people into the album itself is kind of tough because they want to hear Bowie sing. I think this is some of his best songwriting. It's his most experimental album. I've heard someone compare this to Kid A, which I don't 100% agree with, but there's some connection for sure. OK Computer, OK Not OK. This is the one that they put out a couple years ago with it's like a remix, and it's all the extra songs, like a Reminder, Lift, Man of War. Lift, I don't think we ever heard that version, the studio version. We just heard live versions, so it was cool to hear that. Same for Man of War, aka Big Boots. But just a great album. One of my favorites of all time, period, plus all the extra stuff. The Radiohead's B-sides at this time were absolutely incredible. You'll notice that some of this is not opened. If it is open, like this one is, I think, open, and I just put I have a bunch of plastic covers just to add that to that. But yeah, I mean, I haven't listened to a lot of these because I've listened in other forms, but it is nice to have them, especially since Neil Young is not on Spotify, so I can listen to those records. Here's Mars Volta, Francis the Mute, my favorite Volta. Even though this one's got a lot of wankiness on it, it really doesn't detract from how much I love it. Just saw them live, really love it. Volta, this is the one that got me into them, but also this is, to me, their most experimental and fucking weird album. And this is the one where whenever I joke about nonsensical lyrics or words and sentences that don't go together, this is what I usually refer to, like what they do on this one. So I would recommend starting with their first album and then going to this one. But this was a re-release that I hadn't seen, exclusive Clouds Hill edition. I don't know what that means, but I got this recently because it was really hard to find. I saw crusty bootlegs, but never that. Here's my favorite Beatle record. This is the remix of the White Album with the photos of the Beatles. There's Jorb, Gog, Han, and Nasty. They're on there. I love the White Album, and it really is a very imperfect, fucked up album. I know I've said fucked up several times today, but Revolution number 9, like, what is that? You have stuff like, Why Don't We Just Do It in the Road? You got Ringo with Don't Pass Me By. You tried Ringo. You'll get it right with the Octopus song. Wild Honey Pie. There's a lot of stuff on here that I would skip, but I like most of it, and I just keep it on anyway. Except Revolution number 9. The album ends with Cry Baby Cry usually, but there's just something about this album that I feel is really pure and creative, and not, there's less pretense than Pepper and Magical Mystery Tour, and that's, I think, why I love it. I like the flaws of it, and you can really kind of see them as people. I just think the songwriting is great, and the production is minimal, and I like that. And the remix maybe is even better. Here's another top album of all time, George Harrison, All Things Must Pass 50th Anniversary Remix. This Beatles stuff, including the George Harrison album, is just sounding better all the time, because this album was mixed by Phil Spector, who was a Penis Man, and his mixing was just too muddy and too reverby and echoey and just too much. His wall of sound technique, it works on some stuff, but I think the version of All Things Must Pass that we have now is actually better. So I'm very pleased with this remix, and this is a cool set. I'm happy I got this one. I've listened. You got Kraftwerk, The Man Machine. Only a couple songs on this, but I love them. The Model, The Robots, Space Lab, Neon Lights, Metropolis, and The Man Machine. I just think that this is a great, super influential album that when I saw on sale, it was like $20. I had to pick it up. So I don't know a ton of Kraftwerk, but this one in particular, anything they did around this period I really like, but this one in particular is their big one. Here's another on sale, $18.95. It's my not favorite Queens of the Stone Age album, Villains. It's good. I saw them live for this tour, and I like Feet Don't Fail Me. I like The Evil Has Landed. I like Hideaway. Honestly, the whole album is very listenable, but it is one of my least favorite Queens albums. I do think that Rated R and Songs for the Deaf and Like Clockwork are probably ones that I should have on vinyl. But I have this because it was on sale. Take a shot. It's Blade Runner 2049 soundtrack. I saw this in Brooklyn, and I don't think there's a lot of copies of this. At least that's what I was told. That could have been a marketing ploy. Those damn record store owners. And, it's just the soundtrack. I think Hans Zimmer did a very good job with Blade Runner 2049. It's not on the same level as the Vangelis soundtrack, but there's some good stuff on here. So I like it, and especially the Tears in the Rain moment. I think that was a good version of it. Here's a crusty record. Something New, The Beatles. It's yellow and old. You always have to have a yellow and old. This one's got the German version of I Want to Hold Your Hand, which is Komm, gib mir dein Hand. Things we said today. I'll Cry Instead, Tell Me Why, and I Love Her, Happy to Just Dance With You If I Fell. Plus the hit vocals from the motion picture A Hard Day's Night. It is falling apart. And for some reason, there is Led Zeppelin physical graffiti stuff in here. I don't understand what's happening here. But this is on its last legs, but that's okay. I guess take another shot. It's Blade Runner. Laserdisc, not a record, but Laserdisc. But that's fine. The original cut of the futuristic adventure. So this has got the voiceover. Haven't found a way to watch this yet. I put it in my CD player and it just doesn't fit. It broke. 2001, A Space Odyssey. Music from the motion picture soundtrack. So just classical. I mean, it is a striking soundtrack to go along with the movie. So I'm happy to have that. Don't know why I have it. I don't remember where I got a good chunk of this stuff. Here's the Kinks, Sleepwalker. This is their late 70s album, one of, and I think it is totally underrated, under-discussed, especially Stormy Sky, Life Goes On, Mr. Big Man, Sleepwalker, Brother. That's half the album. Kinks are really great, underrated anyway, and then you have this album, which I think is just slept on. George Harrison, Cloud 9. This is late 80s, Got My Mind Set on You. When We Was Fab. Those in particular are the ones that I think people would know. But I like Wreck of the Hesperus. I like Cloud 9 itself, the title track. Talking Heads, Fear of Music. This is just a black cover, but it has, you can't really see it, but it's got like, it looks like steel grating, I guess. But Fear of Music is great. It's got I Zimbra, which was in the new Spider-Man. It's got Life During Wartime, Cities. This is a top tier Talking Heads album. I think maybe my favorite. I mean, Remain in Light and More Songs About Buildings and Food. Those are my two absolute favorites. But also, sometimes this one is more favorite. It's hard to pick. Speaking of great album, this is Television, Marquee Moon. This is another album that I think it does get the credit it deserves, but yet maybe not as well known. This is a band from around the time the Talking Heads were around, and they, to me, made a perfect album. I mean, they were just kind of minimalist, you know, I guess new wave you could call them, or there's probably another classification. I don't know. It's crustcore. I don't know, but Elevation, See No Evil, Venus, Friction, Marquee Moon, Prove It, Torn Curtain, Guiding Light. That's pretty much it. It's just a couple songs. It's 8 songs, but they're all so fucking good. So yeah, to me, this is one of the top albums of the late 70s. One of my favorites of all time. Kid A Amnesia. That's a little awkward to say, but it's a combo of Kid A and Amnesiac. This is the weird Radiohead experimental stuff that there was that game, The Exhibition, that I played. The Kid Amnesiac Exhibition. And this is the music from that. A lot of good deep cuts on this. A lot of stuff that feels incomplete, but it's interesting to hear, and some alternate versions of some songs that were already on the albums. I love Kid A, and I like Amnesiac a lot, but this is a great way to put them together. They always kind of felt like a double album. So here's a little indie band called Red Vox. This is their album Realign. This was just a stealthy self-promotion segment. Vinyls will be restocked at some point. The records are still... I've mentioned this on my streams, but apparently the record production stuff is in a standstill because so many people want to get records made and there aren't giant record plants available. Like the major labels aren't opening new ones. So I think we have to wait 8 months from when we put in the order for reprints of our records. So hopefully soon. Speaking of kerosene, you know, I did this cover myself. This is just a tea lamp. I've talked about it, but it's inverted. So this is the flame. It's actually not an eye, but there's a couple different things going on here. It's just a composite of a variety of things, and I'm really, really happy with the way that cover turned out. And it was a lot of happy accident. Here's Red Vox, Another Light. Red Vox, what could go wrong? Of course I have my own records. Why wouldn't I? I have multiple copies of them. Old, crusty David Bowie Heroes. I mean, not much needs to be said about this album. I'll tell you what, though. I love The Secret Life of Arabia. Love that song. And V2 Schneider. And the quieter instrumental-y songs, I think, are phenomenal. So, songs and stories about tugboats. Me. That's one of my many names, Tugboat. This is an album by the Black Keys. The name of this album is Brothers. I still think this is their best album, and I'll tell you which ones I like the best on it. I like Unknown Brother. I like Sinister Kid, 10 Cent Pistol, Too Afraid to Love You, and of course, like Tighten Up, and you know, all those ones. But Unknown Brother and Sinister Kid are my 2 picks. It's Ween. Is this? Yeah, I think Chromatic gifted this to me. This is 9 Inch Nails. What is it? So it's 9 Inch Nails, and I don't know what's going on here, but The Fragile Deviations. This record was compiled and arranged by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross in Los Angeles, 2016. All music is from the original Fragile sessions in New Orleans, 1997 to 1999. So instrumentals, alternate takes, alternate versions. Pretty cool. So here's an album I would classify as YouTube poison. It's called Led Zeppelin Houses of the Holy. I cannot show the cover. The cover is weird. The album is great. And I think the Rain song is one of their best songs. So I'm just going to go ahead and not show that. I've got the Kinks. Maybe my favorite Kinks album. Maybe. Probably. It's part 1, Power Man, Lola versus Power Man and the Money Go Round. Weird title. Great album. Wes Anderson used a good chunk of this on Darjeeling Limited. So you got Strangers, Lola, Top of the Pops. Get Back in Line is a favorite. This Time Tomorrow is a favorite. Ape Man is great. All of it. This is definitely one of their best albums. And I think if you want to try listening to the Kinks music, that's a good starting place. Ren and Stimpy, the Essential Collection, including Little Idiot, Egypt. So I guess this is just Ren and Stimpy. You know what? I think this is a Laserdisc. It is. Not a record. Another awesome Kinks album, Muswell Hillbillies. This is a big album. And it has Skin and Bone, 20th Century Man, Alcohol. Kinks honestly just had so many great albums that got lost to time because everyone focused on the Beatles. And I love Los Beatles, but I don't discount the Kinks. Here's a record, Led Zeppelin 4, and it has stuff on it. It's got drawings. This was my mom's record. So, yeah, I have some old records from like release, including Wish You Were Here and Ram from Paul McCartney. So this one, let's just say, has some sentimental value. Don't mind me, I just had to remove the not at all Leon Kennedy jacket because it was getting kind of hot. And also, I can move now without leather noises. The Leather Club is a couple blocks down, you know. This is Zub, by the way. This is Nortz's son, friend. I'm not sure. I was never told. I asked, but I don't get a response. But it's Zub, Z-Z-U-B. Here's a very obvious choice, given how much I've talked about this, but I think someone gave this to me at a convention. Thank you, someone. I'm very lucky because people have given me records at conventions and sent some to my P.O. box and stuff. So that's been a really nice reward for whatever funny noises I make. But it's Tame Impala, Lonerism. Still, I think their best album. I mean, that's my pick for their best album. Currents is great. Their first album is great. But Lonerism is the sound that I personally like the best. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Chunky Shrapnel. This is a live album. It's from, I guess, 2019 mostly. And there's some stuff from Murder of the Universe. There's some stuff from Infest the Rat's Nest. And just a bunch of other stuff that I don't know. But I just loved the artwork so much. I could not pass this up. An album I still have not listened to. I got this when it first came out, 2014. It is Pink Floyd, The Endless River. This is a collection of unused, I guess, material from the Division Bell sessions and some other stuff. I don't know. There's a part of me that doesn't want to have this be the last thing I hear from Pink Floyd. Even though they just put out another song. Hey, Hey, Rise Up, whatever. And, I mean, it's Dave Floyd, so no Roger, which means some people will hate it. I like Division Bell. I think Division Bell is a perfectly reasonable listen with some really cool songs on it. Lyrically, I don't know. I mean, how could you get better than Roger? But Roger's Roger. The point is, this is stuff that didn't make the cut for Division Bell, so I've been kind of afraid to listen to it. I've heard one or two songs from it, and including the one with vocals, which I wasn't crazy about. But, you know, one day, the Claypool-Lennon Delirium. This is Les Claypool and Sean Lennon. This is South of Reality, which I saw their tour when they did this album. This is a great album. That band is phenomenal. Les Claypool and Sean Lennon have a really cool sound together. It's Primus and melodic and psychedelic and good songwriting. So I enjoy their music. And this album, I don't know if I like this one or Monolith on Phobos more. For some reason, I bought this. It's the Noel Gallagher Best Of. Every song on here is good, including the new ones. I really like Noel Gallagher's solo career. I unabashedly like Oasis. I do. And I feel like Noel wrote some great songs in his post-Oasis departure. Here's the songs on here. Everybody's on the Run, Death of You and Me, aka What a Life. If I Had a Gun is great. Holy Mountain's a great song. And the song I like that is new is called We're on Our Way Now. So yeah, just a good album. Skies of Arcadia. This one is cool. This is the soundtrack. It is, I think there's 4 records in here. But it comes with a nice booklet. It's got some really, really cool art. One of my favorite games. While I don't like the soundtrack as much as I like, Uematsu or Mitsuda's soundtracks, this is really, I had to get this. I love the box. I love the way the records look. And I just think it's an underrated game that I would love to see a proper remake of or a sequel. Here's Rust Never Sleeps, Neil Young. Not a bad song on this album. When I got into this album, I really, really got into it. Like most Neil Young stuff, when I just kind of put the record on a couple times, it got into my fucking soul. So, my favorites, I like Pocahontas, Thrasher, of course, My Hey Hey, but, again, not a bad song on the album. And it was half recorded live, and then they did some studio stuff afterwards. Here's the Abbey Road remix that they did a couple years back. And again, really nice packaging. And good remix. Just a quality album that continues to sound great all these years later. And it's fucking Abbey Road. What can you say about it? Some would say this is their best album. I would not argue. I like the White Album a little bit more, but I can't deny that Abbey Road's a tighter album and probably better. I especially love on Abbey Road, not Maxwell's Silverhammer. That's the one song I tend to skip. But I love the medley. Obviously, Here Comes the Sun. I Want You, She's So Heavy. That's the good shit. Ram, McCartney, don't have a cover for it. And Zeppelin. This is just Led Zeppelin 1. And I think this is the original record. Monty Python, Life of Brian. It says, Record Store Day UK, the Life of Brian soundtrack album was erected as a picture disc. The White Stripes Greatest Hits. I mean, I like their full albums, but this is the only Stripes album I have in vinyl form, and you can't go wrong with the best of, especially considering this kind of cuts out some of the later career stuff that's not as great. The Cars, their first record. This is, the track listing reads like a greatest hits because it's just that good. This is, I think, one of the best debut albums of all time. I would 100% recommend listening to this and then Candy-O because they are just phenomenal albums. I like Candy-O a little bit better just on a personal level, but I think their first album is their best. Pretty Hate Machine, 9 Inch Nails. I do like this album. You have Head Like a Hole, Something I Can Never Have. Those two in particular. But again, just an amazing first album. Infest the Rat's Nest by Gizzard. Can't really see it too well, but it's a picture disc. Big Star. For those that don't know Big Star, they were founded by Alex Chilton and Chris Bell. And essentially, they were one of those 70s bands that never quite hit the level of fame they deserved. But this whole album, #1 record, is just start to finish, great. Pearl Jam, 10. I mean, it's Pearl Jam 10. What can you say about it? Again, it reads like a best of. Once, Even Flow, Alive, Black Jeremy, Oceans. Yeah, it's fucking Pearl Jam. Gorillaz, Song Machine. So, not my favorite album of theirs. Plastic Beach might be my favorite, but Demon Days might be my favorite. But this is also really good. It's a recent one. I thought this was one of their better recent releases, and I love Now Now. But Strange Times is good. Valley of Pagans with Beck is great. Pac-Man's good. I really like Désolé, Momentary Bliss. They did Désolé and Momentary Bliss live when I saw them last week, in fact. And yeah, it was a great fucking show. So another REM, Automatic for the People, which I think is great. Maybe not my favorite REM, but this is the one that got me into REM. And in particular, I love Drive, and Find the River might be one of their best songs and one of my favorite songs. So yeah, needless to say, I do love this album. I got this and many of my other records from Vintage Vinyl in New Jersey, which closed down, unfortunately. But it's a poster of every Gizzard release from 2015 to current, which at the time, current was, I guess, Chunky Shrapnel live in San Francisco. Yeah, so like 2020 I got this. But Vintage Vinyl was great. Station to Station, Bowie. At various times I would have considered this to be my favorite Bowie. And Station to Station, the song, is one of my favorites of all time, just because it just changes enough that it keeps you engaged. It's like a 10-minute song, but I don't feel like it's a 10-minute song. It always goes by real quick, and I love it. It's wacky, though. I mean, this whole album is just Cocaine, the album. And there's not a whole lot of songs. It's just Station to Station, Golden Years, Word on a Wing, TVC15, which I love, Stay, Wild as the Wind. It gets, like, really sing-songy, melodramatic, croony, but I don't mind it. It just seems to work for where he was in his career. So I don't know if it's my favorite Bowie album, but it changes a lot. But this is one of the best, and it's one of the most unhinged. This is an original pressing of Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here. Again, I think this belonged to my mother, so that is pretty cool. 1975. And again, I go back and forth. It could be Wish You Were Here. It could be The Wall sometimes, even when I'm in the right mood. Or it could be Animals. It's usually Animals, but Wish You Were Here is just too good. Also, I mentioned the polyphonic video about Shine On You Crazy Diamond. That made me appreciate that song even more, even though I knew the story about Syd Barrett and, you know, the song's kind of history. But there's just something about that song in particular. Don't get me wrong, the songs in the middle, Wish You Were Here, Welcome to the Machine, and Have a Cigar are incredible, but there's something about Shine On You Crazy Diamond that I think the only other song that gets close to that is Echoes. So yeah, I just wanted to make it known how good this album is. Nirvana, Bleach. This album is my first album that I've ever owned. I won it in New Jersey on a boardwalk on cassette. And I had liked Nirvana. I was 10. It was 1995. It was a year after Cobained. And it was really sad to learn that, but I got really, really into the music. I don't really know why. It just connected with me. My cousin got me into it, and I just bought everything I could. I still think Bleach is one of their best. That's hard to say because there's so few albums, but Bleach is a great start. It's not as polished, but it's heavy. There's a metal, like, sludgy metal thing that's, you know, the grunge thing makes perfect sense. And you have Floyd the Barber on here. Then you get like About a Girl, which is like, oh, this is kind of poppy and Beatley, and it shows where they would go a little bit later. But Sifting, Downer, Big Cheese, Mr. Mustache, Scoff, yeah, this is not to be missed if you're at all into Nirvana. Limited edition Target purple vinyl, Nirvana Unplugged from New York. in New York. This is something that when I was growing up was played on MTV constantly. It was just always on, but it's hard to watch in context of what happened to Kurt a year later, but it's still, I mean, it's a very easy listen, and it's something that I used to have on loop. Just do my homework, loop this, play a video game, loop it. I guess really the best songs on it to me are the fucking Meat Puppet songs that they cover. Plateau, Oh Me, and Lake of Fire. I just, you get so used to hearing the Nirvana hits that when you get to those, it's like, oh, this is a little different, and the Meat Puppets are fantastic. I also really like Man Who Sold the World and Jesus Don't Want Me for a Sunbeam. Again, covers. And this was my first exposure to David Bowie. The picture disc of Abbey Road, which again is more for display than it is for listening. You've got Help Us Stranger by the Raconteurs. Saw them live for this tour, and I don't think they ever put out a bad album. I mean, there's only 3 Raconteurs albums. It's Jack White and Brendan Benson, and this one's another good one. I think their first album is still the best, but this has some great songs. I like Sunday Driver. I like Now That You're Gone, Shine a Light on Me, Only Child, Help Me Stranger. Good stuff. Jimi. Experience Hendrix. The best of Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix was my intro to classic rock. Him and the Doors. So I kind of feel like Jimi doesn't get enough credit as he, used to at one point. But like extremely influential and instrumental in changing the way the guitar was played. And I love his voice. I love his guitar work. I love the band. Mitch Mitchell is an incredible drummer. You have All Along the Watchtower, which is a cover. Wind Cries Mary, which was one of my favorite songs growing up. Fire, Purple Haze, of course. Stone Free. Manic Depression's another great one. Little Wing. Yeah, just great. Castles Made of Sand. Love Jimi. Here's another Gizzard, Infest the Rat's Nest, non-picture disc. Here's Candy-O. It is... Oh, there's a little booba. It's fine. It's a record. This is the Cars. And there's the Cars. And they were great. And they had so many radio hits, but their albums are great too. I really like It's All I Can Do, Double Life. I like the song Candy-O, Night Spots in particular. You Can't Hold On Too Long, Lust for Kick. It's the whole album is great. But there's a couple that are standouts for me. Here's Wario, which is also great. You got Let's-A Go, Since I Held Your Money, It's All I Can Do to Win a Golden Life, Wabido, Wario, Spaghetti Spots, You Can't Hold On to Losing to Wario, Touched for Kicks, Got a Lot on My Mustache, Winning Type. Rolling Stones Hot Rocks, one of my first CDs. This was a record store day version. This is like a best of 64 to 71, which, don't tell anyone, that was the best period of the Rolling Stones. They never lived up to their potential after that. And I love the Stones, and I love plenty of post-71 stuff. Great albums post-71. But, God, this early period just is so good. So I wore this album out. Time Is on My Side, Heart of Stone, Play with Fire, Can't Get No Satisfaction, Tears Go By, Get Off My Cloud, Mother's Little Helper, 19th Nervous Breakdown, Painted Black, Under My Thumb, Ruby Tuesday. Like, that whole run of songs is just no skip. Honestly, there's not a single skip on the album. And the version of Midnight Rambler that they have on here is really good. So yeah, Hot Rocks is my introduction to the Stones, and I think one of their best albums, all things considered. The Beach Boys, Pet Sounds. I really connected with this album. This is the best Beach Boys album, and I love Smile, and I like Friends is pretty good, and the one with the horse on the cover, Surf's Up. But this is their best album. I mean, it's one of the best of all time. It's famous for inspiring McCartney to do Revolver, or actually Pepper. Sorry, Sgt. Pepper. Or it might have been Revolver, because I think the story goes Rubber Soul influenced Brian Wilson, and then McCartney listened to Pet Sounds, and then was inspired to do Pepper, I believe, Sgt. Pepper. But this album is happy, but also extremely melancholy, and there's just a sadness that runs throughout this whole thing. I love the production, the arrangements. I like all the fact that it's not just a straight up rock album, and there's real evolution. I at one point would have said this was my favorite album because I just connected with it so much, which probably says a lot about me. But I love You Still Believe in Me. Wouldn't It Be Nice, obviously. Sloop John B is a lot of fun. Here Today is great. I Just Wasn't Made for These Times is... There are songs on here that will destroy me emotionally, which I can't believe I'm admitting that about an album where a bunch of weird looking dudes feed a goat. Here's another Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails is obviously a band I very much enjoy. This is With Teeth. I think this is a great album. It's much more accessible. You know, With Teeth has With Teeth on it. It's got The Hand That Feeds. Every Day is Exactly the Same. I think it's a really great distillation of their sound at the time, and people kind of passed over it a little bit because it was too poppy. But it doesn't matter to me. I think it's one of their best. This is a golden era Nine Inch Nail album for sure. Hot for Robot. This is my friend Dave's band. They put out an album of their Hot for Robot music. Red Vox did a show with Hot for Robot back in like 2016, 2017. And they make good music. Little promo. Neil Young, Harvest. So I haven't opened it, but Harvest is one of the best albums from Neil Young, I think. And considering, again, Young is not on Spotify anymore, I thought it would be nice to have the album in case I wanted to listen to it. But yeah, Harvest is just great. It's I think I like On the Beach more. Maybe even like Zuma a little bit more. But it is his most commercial. It's his biggest hit up until that point. So yeah, I really like this album. I mean, it's got his big, Old Man. It's got Heart of Gold. So yeah, it's Harvest. Wilco, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. It took me a while to warm up to this album. It doesn't immediately hit, but when it does, it becomes understood why it's influential, why people love it so much. My favorites on this are I Am Trying to Break Your Heart, Pot, Kettle Black, Poor Places, Reservations. Whole album is good. Camera is my least favorite, weirdly enough. But the whole thing, and Jesus Etc. was a huge song for me last year. So yes, Wilco. If you haven't Wilco'd, I recommend Wilcoing. XTC, Skylarking. My favorite XTC album. This is, to me, it's just a really beautiful album. It sounds like summer. And Summer's Cauldron is the first song on the album. All of it is really good, but when you get down to it, Dear God is the one people mostly know. I think The Meeting Place is maybe my favorite song on it. This is a really good pop song with a nice psychedelic flair to it. This is the remix of Let It Be, which is good. I still like Let It Be Naked a little bit better because it gets rid of the Phil Spector stuff and just cleans things up a bit. I think that was my introduction to Let It Be. It will always be my favorite. But this is really great too, and I think Giles Martin did a good job at preserving the original, but also, making it sound just a little bit crisper. Here's a offhanded record store day purchase. David Bowie Brilliant Adventure EP. It's just got A Small Plot of Land live, My Death live, Johnny Downloader, aka I'm Afraid of Americans, early version, and I Have Not Been to Oxford Town, alternative single mix. So it's one of those things they put out for record store day where it's like if you're a collector, maybe you'd want it because it'll never be out again. There's not much on here, but it's nice to have, and the cover's pretty neat. So it's 90s Bowie. Here's Pond 9. This was a gift, and I think it's a great album. It's a shame I mentioned before because they put out a special edition of this with 4 new songs actually, And those songs are as good, if not better, than some of the ones already on here. But my favorites are Song for Agnes, track 1, Take Me Avalon. America's Cup is great, and I also love Toast. I think Toast is one of their best songs. Arctic Monkeys, Hotel thing, Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. I love half of this album more than any of their other stuff, and half of it doesn't do a whole lot for me, but I think it's just a great album that is not given the attention it deserves. Their new album that's coming out soon is going to be like following in the kind of vein of this album, from what I understand. So to me, that's great, because I want to hear more of what they did for this album. But yeah, I mean, it's more lounge singy, and it's just kind of not like their rock stuff that they're known for. But I like it quite a bit. Bad Motorfinger by Soundgarden. I think Super Unknown might be my favorite Soundgarden, but Bad Motorfinger is heavy. It's a good middle ground between their old sound and what they would eventually kind of become. And obviously Rusty Cage and Outshined are the ones that people know. I think the whole album is just fucking awesome. So yeah, Soundgarden is a band that I think, you know, people know Nirvana, they know Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains. I'm sure people still find Soundgarden eventually, but they were really, like, of that time, they were the best of the best. Radiohead, In Rainbows, possibly tied for favorite album. It would be like a Kid A, In Rainbows, OK Computer three-way tie. It's just, you know, it's that good. I saw them live at All Points West in Liberty State Park. It was an outdoor festival thing. And did this get darker? I feel like that got darker. Huh. And they were great. I love Jigsaw Falling Into Place. That's like probably my favorite on the album, aside from Reckoner. And 15 Step. And we're almost done, even though my camera has decided to potentially start losing light. The Police. Zenyatta Mandata. That sounds like a word I made up. But this has got Driven to Tears. This has got Canary in a Coal Mine. Do 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 da da da. Just a great album. It's one of many great albums. There's a viral thing going around of Sting has been kidnapped. The police have no lead. So that's my record collection. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about stuff you've heard me talk about already, and seeing some of the records I have. Nort, did you enjoy? I think he enjoyed. All right, everybody. Thank you, and take care. And maybe my camera didn't get darker. Maybe it is the lighting that got darker. I don't know. Maybe it's all in my head, Luigi. But yes, in the flesh, I gotta go to bingo, everybody. So you take care, and thanks for watching. And remember to tip your merchant. It's a little hard to get into a leather jacket and still seem cool. Cool pose, right?